The presidents of the United States haven't always lived in the White House. For the entirety of the 18th century, not a single president lived in it. So where did the presidents live, you ask? Today we will answer that here on Presidential History. Many people don't know that under the Articles of Confederation, New York became the capital of the United States. 1 week before his inauguration in April of 1789, the Samuel Osgood House was arranged to be rented by Congress for him upon his arrival. As soon as it was rented, Congress set about expanding it to fit the president's needs. Congress spent about $8,000 on these renovations, around about $250,000 in today's money. The Samuel Osgood House was built by Walter Franklin in 1770. After Franklin's death, his wife, Maria, married Samuel Osgood in 1786, who at the time was serving as a commissioner of the Treasury. The couple settled in Maria's house in 1786, and by 1789, Congress had came along and rented it. In the house, there were rooms intended as an office for both the president and staff, making it very similar in function as a residence and workplace for the president as the White House. After a few months, President Washington grew tired of the Samuel Osgood House, as he believed it was not big enough to satisfy his needs as both chief executive and head of state. Additionally, the house was located in a very cramped and unclean part of Manhattan. And thus, after living in the Samuel Osgood House for almost exactly 1 year, President Washington saw a better house for rent and sprang for it. The Alexander Macomb House served as the second presidential residence and was occupied by Washington from February to August of 1790. The house was built between 1786 and 1788 by Alexander Macomb, an Irish immigrant who had become wealthy through his work as a merchant and land speculator. The house had 4 stories and was reputed to have large and unobstructed views of the Hudson River. It had many rooms with high enough ceilings and large enough square footages to comfortably handle President Washington's weekly levées and other public receptions. Washington lived in the Alexander Macomb House for just about 7 months, moving out right when Congress passed the Residency Act of 1790, which declared Philadelphia as the new capital for a period of 10 years until a federally controlled capital could be built, what later became Washington, D.C. President Washington then moved into what is now called President's House in Philadelphia. The house was built in 1767 and given as a wedding gift to Polly Masters, a young colonial woman who married Richard Penn, the lieutenant governor of the colony at the time, and coincidentally a grandson of the founder of Pennsylvania, William Penn. Richard Penn, Polly's husband, was later the man that the Continental Congress entrusted to hand-deliver the Olive Branch petition to King George III. The house was then used by 2 different British generals during the Revolutionary War, Benedict Arnold, famous traitor, and Sir William Howe, famously the British commandant who won the very bloody Battle of Bunker Hill. It was actually in this house that Benedict Arnold initiated his secret contact with the British forces that eventually led to his defection. After that, a very famous Revolutionary War philanthrope named Richard Morris bought the house, only to share it with George Washington when he needed it during the Constitutional Convention of 1787, and then move out entirely when President Washington needed it again. The house was situated only 1 block away from Independence Hall, the place where the Declaration of Independence and Constitution were signed. It was during this stretch that George Washington laid the cornerstone for the White House in 1792. It would be a full 8 years until the White House was finished in 1800.